Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.
On this episode, our very first one, you will learn more about who we are, how we got into this work, and what you can expect as you go. So, Erin,
Yeah,
how you've been doing this work for what, like almost 10 years now, coming
it's
up
hard
on
to
a
believe.
decade. How did you get into this work?
Ooh, how much time do we have again? Um, well, I got into this when it was probably around the time of my grandfather passing. So this was, I think I was maybe 13, 12 years old. I was 11 or so when he passed. And so just a year or so afterwards, I started like experiencing all of these things that I really couldn't explain, like supernatural phenomenon. I and I sound so like it sounds hard to believe when I say it out loud, but I literally heard his voice, what I'm assuming would be my grandfather's voice in my left ear, just as I was about to sleep, say my name really loud. Like it was like,
Wow.
Erin. Not
Wow.
as maybe not as rough as
Yeah.
as that. My grandfather was a kind and gentle soul, sorry,
Yeah.
grandpa. But it was pretty loud and it freaked me out.
Yeah.
Actually, so much so that I would put like a bit of a, I would have my pillow or my stuffy like on my ears when I went to
Huh.
sleep, so that I would, yeah, so that I wouldn't
Pluck you
like
up.
hear that again because
Yeah.
it was so unsettling.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't feel, I wasn't like, it wasn't a bad feeling. It just shook me up. Um, I was like seeing doors close. I was hearing voices in the distance that sounded like if there was a radio that it was on the lowest volume setting and I just couldn't turn it back up to hear what people were saying. And this
Mm-hmm.
would be like, no one's in the house, windows aren't open, like very, very odd and inexplainable.
Yeah.
Um, and one time, like I saw my plate actually move in front of me,
Wow.
just an inch. I think just an inch or two, and just to the right. And while I was eating my toast, and I remember going to my mom and saying all this stuff happened, and she didn't believe me,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a kid,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
right. Um, and I remember so clearly that she was like joking with me, and she said, "Oh, it must have been the ants that moved the plate," which we didn't have an ant problem, just in case anyone is
Yeah.
wondering. But it was just her reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then from there, it just sort of snowballed. My mom was dealing with her own grief because this was her father that passed,
Yeah.
and yeah, she went to see a medium who now is like a really good friend of the family. So
Mm-hmm.
shout out to Maureen. And I had a reading with her, and she basically said, "Erin, like you could do this work.
Yeah.
Like you're a medium." And I was like, "No, I'm a teenager, right? I think I
Yeah.
probably had was 15 or 16, like 15 when I got my reading."
Yeah.
Um, and but I tried it out for fun with my friends in high school,
Yeah.
and I was really accurate,
Wow.
spookily accurate, like
Spookily.
things that I would
Yeah.
have no idea about.
Yeah.
Like you don't talk about. You wouldn't talk about, the details around your grandfather's passing,
Right. No.
who he was, right?
Yeah.
And so it really freaked me out, and I stopped doing mediumship
Yeah.
and like stopped doing that. People would ask me for readings, or they'd be like, "Can you like?" And I'm like, "Nope, I don't do that. I don't know what you're talking about." Um, and then it wasn't until I was in my early 20s where I did it just for fun again. And again, I was very accurate. And then from there, I was encouraged to just continue with it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it just sort of snowballed. And now here we
The
are,
rest is
and
history.
it's been amazing.
Amazing. Yeah. And so tell us a little bit about yourself, like outside of your work. So, what have you
Yeah.
got going on? What's your life
Ooh.
look like?
Well, Amy, I mean, you know this because
I
we've been
do.
chatting about how busy our lives have been
Mm-hmm.
lately. I'm back in school. I'm studying autism and behavioral science, which has been really, really good. And so I've been like doing my studies, but doing my readings as well. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
really passionate about like community work, working with children and youth, specifically children and youth with various disabilities.
Yeah.
And I really, really feel a strong calling to that work. Otherwise, just got engaged. So
Oh,
just gonna do a
amazing.
little shameless,
Amazing. Show us the ring
yeah,
for
little blurb. Hey
yeah.
guys.
It's like, does this mug make me look engaged? Have you ever seen that meme before?
Or from Bridesmaids, that movie where she's like, I want to have an apple. Would you like an
Exactly.
apple
Just
with me?
shameless. Shameless. Um Speaking of that, let's go a little off course for a minute. Tell everybody about the ring and a reading
Oh,
that we did.
okay. That's exciting because so Amy's fantastic. She's going to tell you about like how she got started doing this afterwards. But Amy gave me a reading. That's how you know we're in love, you guys. Uh,
We pay each other for our services. That's how much we
yeah,
love each other.
that's how much we love each other.
Yeah.
And she described like a blue greeny ring. Like she was like you could see that it was like a blue turquoise
Not a
ring
traditional
color.
engagement ring, like not a
And
diamond, is what I
like a,
said. I said like a
yeah,
blue gemstone, I think is what I was seeing.
gemstone. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And or emerald or something like that.
Yeah.
You're like emerald or and I was like, oh, okay. Cool. And it was. And she
Yeah.
was
A
right.
year later, Erin's like,
Okay.
hello, check out my ring. Yeah.
And
Amazing.
the other cool thing, I'll really quickly just sort of say, is that there was us and then a few other folks who I'm sure will come on as guests at some
Mm-hmm.
point with this. Lovely, lovely people. We were planning to do an event together on the 24th of September. Like that was, you reminded me of this because
Yes.
I totally forgot.
Yeah.
And on September 24th, I got engaged. And so it didn't end up happening. And I think you're
Yeah.
right. The
Our
reason was
event.
because I was supposed to get engaged that day. Yeah.
Exactly. Like so just to build on that, we had come together, a few of us as a collective, to offer some sort of online event, and we were really gung ho and the energy was amazing, and then we just started to kind of like drop like flies. Oh, like I've got this going on, I got this commitment, and so we took it as a sign that it wasn't the right time to offer it. And we had tentatively scheduled it for September 24th. And then, you know, Erin got engaged on September 24th. So I reminded her of this the other day, and I'm like, I feel like it must have been when your fiance kind of had decided on a date or like a general time when the universe was like, nope, you're too busy for this. You're too busy for this. Let's like clear their schedule.
You can't do this. You can't do this, Eric. We can't
Right.
tell you why, but
Yes.
you're
Right. And I was just like, whoa, like that's amazing. Yeah, that's
so cool.
amazing. And that's kind of like, this is the kind of stuff you'll hear us talk about, like how the universe and our connection to our own intuition, to spirit, to our own spirit, as well as those around us and others, and like kind of the universal collective energy, and how learning to work with it. This is how it shows up in our everyday lives, right? And the more
Yeah.
that you trust, like when you get that nudge, oh, I don't think that date's going to work for me. Trusting to say it because there's
Yeah.
something coming. It's clearing your schedule for a reason, right? And that's just a really perfect example
Yeah.
of
No,
how
I
Erin and I
agree.
experience this in our daily lives and what we want you, our viewers, to learn to experience too, because it's for all of us, right?
Trust that. Yeah. Trust that those feelings. Trust those little, the stuff that you feel on the
Yes.
inside and in the pit of your stomach, right? That gut feeling or your intuition.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Well, Amy. Okay, Amy. So obviously, people have to know about you. Who are you? Other than just an amazingly talented, gifted medium.
Oh, thank you.
But what? So, what do you do outside of mediumship? And then maybe we can talk about how you also got started, because you've also been doing this for
A
quite a
couple
while,
years.
right?
Yeah, not as long as you, but a few years. In hindsight, I can see like I've been a medium my whole
You've
life. You
always
probably
been
feel
there.
that way
Yeah.
too, right? But it's been a thing that's come to me later in life. But yeah, I'm a mom of three. I've got two teenagers and one kindergartner, so that keeps me quite busy. They are all very sensitive and spirited themselves, so we'll see how that goes. And yeah, I'm a military spouse, so military family. We currently live in Ontario, but we are from the East Coast. So, yeah, so it's been an interesting experience moving and experiencing a new place. And that may be a future episode about the lesson in which sometimes things that kind of come out of nowhere and kind of shake us, how often there's a huge lesson in it for us. And that
Yeah.
move was one for me, which we'll talk about at a future date. But yeah, that's me. I have always been spiritual and intuitive, much like Erin, since childhood. I had a near-death experience when I was 5.5, 6, in which I choked. And I remember the details of that whole thing vividly, of my mom's face, of what she was wearing, of her calling for help. And also experiencing this really like kind of out of body experience, feeling kind of outside of myself, weightless, floating, also
Ugh,
feeling
that's
the
so good.
presence of others around me, but not knowing who they were at 5.5, 6 years old. Now knowing who they were in spirit, who was around me. But yeah, I come sometimes say that I feel like that was the universe opening the door a crack for me, to show me what was in store for me. And because, often I truly feel this way, and I think that you do too. We are all intuitive beings. We all have intuition, therefore, we are all intuitive. And that this is really available for all of us. That's really how I believe, or how I feel and what I believe. But I think some of us kind of come in, I liken it to like, like a dimmer switch. A light, we're like full
Yeah.
blast, very sensitive to spirit. We know what's going on, we know it's there, and we're sensitive to it. And some of us can learn to turn up the dial, right? But it's there for all of us. But yeah, so that's really,
That's such a good analogy too, by the way.
yeah. Sometimes I use radio, but lately I've been using the
Seeing with
dimmer
the light.
switch. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
cool.
yeah, so that's me, and these kind of things happened. We'll talk about them. There's going to be a lot of storytelling, I'm sure, in this podcast as we go, but these things just kind of happen to me quite often. I was always extremely drawn to spirituality, to the spiritual world. I talk about reincarnation when I was like 10, and felt like I had a really good understanding about it, even though nobody taught me about it, even though I didn't read about it. I just knew. And
Mm-hmm.
it's still the same belief I have now, right? It's interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, fast forward through my teens, I knew that I was extra sensitive. It kind of made me feel a little bit different or alien than everyone else. And so I definitely turned down that dimmer switch so I could blend in and be like everybody else. And then fast forward mid-20s, pregnant with my first child. The reason I knew I was pregnant with that first child is because she came to me in a dream, precognition.
Yeah.
This happened with each of my pregnancies. So I have 3 children now, and four, one in spirit. And, my kind of senses got really, really strong with each pregnancy I found, which is very common. It's something that a lot of us experience through pregnancy. We get extra sensitive to things.
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward to coming up on 4 years now, my father passed away really suddenly. So again, with your loss of your grandfather, me with the loss of my father, it felt like the catalyst in some way for me to really step into this work.
Yeah.
And so he was there like immediately, and for a year constantly gave me signs that he was there. And it took me that long to really like wrap my head around it and get my bearings around it. And then I decided to do this work. And so I did, I don't know, hundreds of practice readings to anybody who wanted one. Created a Facebook page, the same Facebook page I have now. And I wasn't ready to call myself a medium yet. So I think my name was like Intuitive Amy Brookes, something like that. Did practice readings for months. And then I actually had a client, like a person who I had read for, message me, and she's like, Amy, I just sent you an EMT. An email money transfer, for those who don't know what an EMT is. You are ready to be paid. You are too good to do free work. And I was like, okay. And the next day, I'm a little bit impulsive sometimes, right? Especially if the universe gives me a sign like that. I'm like, okay, it's go time, right? Yeah, I'm ready. And so like I launched my business, registered my domain, did all the things. It's been almost it's coming up on 3 years actually. So I've been doing this work since very early 2019, professionally.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that's me. That's what I do. I love this work. You love this work.
I love it.
Yeah.
There's nothing, I don't think there's anything really, it's impossible to describe because when seeing there's two sides to it. I feel like there's like you're giving people an unspeakable joy, right? You're giving others comfort in a lot of ways, and then I also see the other side to it where you might be open, but then you say that one thing and you just see like the light bulb switch on for that person. Like I get goosebumps, like
yeah.
It's like that there's something more to this, there's something more to life, right? Than what we can just see with our own eyes. And when you can see that sort of that light, that
spark
switch on or dim up, a notch even, right?
Yeah.
It's beautiful. There's nothing, and to be able to do that, to be able to give that,
nothing like
it's humbling, and it just, I don't think there's a job on earth, that's, so and we're both the same. We're both so grateful to be doing this. Like I like want to cry because it's just,
I know. And I think that's like the perfect segue into, kind of how we as mediums operate, and the ethics, because we're both, I'm pretty sure that I know that I do. I'm pretty sure that Erin as well identifies as an evidential medium.
Yes.
Right? So an evidential medium essentially means that we ask for evidence. I always say I asked for the good stuff, because when I was a grieving daughter and lost my dad and I went to a medium, I wanted that medium to give me like actual proof that he was there. So it's amazing and healing and beautiful to hear your dad is here. He loves you. He's so proud of you. That holds so much weight. It's so beautiful. But if that person was like, described my dad or brought up a specific memory or a smell that I associated with him or something that was super specific that they could never, ever know about.
No, something that you just did. Like I always tell people,
current stuff.
If I'm bringing it in, and it's not like I thought about that a month ago or I did that a month ago. If you just did that, right?
Yes.
This week, doing it tomorrow, yesterday, then it's confirmation.
Yes. Yeah. And it's just, that's really when I see the light bulb go on, right? And I'm like, people are like, oh. And then I follow up with the guidance and the loving messages. Because then the person's like, I know that's coming from him or her, right? So yeah, that's amazing. So let's talk about ethics. Yeah. So ethics are a big thing because of how we operate and because of how heart-centered we are. We feel it's extreme. We're very passionate. We feel very passionate and called to share the message about ethics and mediumship, right? Because like with any profession, there are good and not so good, right? And there are people that come heart-centered, full of integrity, and there are people that don't. We find this in every field. But for us, in this field, which has a history of misunderstandings, fear-based thinking, so many myths, we are really up against, a lot of, I don't want to say discrimination, but a lot of misconception is a good word. And I don't mean to say, like, I actually love reading for skeptics. I think skepticism is extremely healthy and normal, quote unquote.
It's important. Yeah.
But there's a difference between skepticism and closed off, right? So yeah, skepticism is totally normal. Totally normal. So why don't you tell us a little bit about why it's so important for you?
I mean, and I think ethics is important just in life in general. Yes. And like, I've taken so much, for those that don't know, I've studied social service work, now studying, like child or behavioral autism. There's every field you go into has different ethics behind it. And it's important to do it in this work for me because I've personally had readings where I didn't feel that medium was operating from an ethical place, or from a moral, because ethics and morals, they go hand in hand, right? And I never wanted to do that. I never wanted to be that, to do the same thing. And so I wanted to kind of flip the switch on it and make sure that when I do give readings, I'm telling people, listen, I want you to feel as comfortable as possible, which you feel the same way, right? Mm-hmm. So I tell people, just so that they feel comfortable, that if I'm bringing in anything you don't want to go to, you just tell me. We won't go there, right?
Yeah.
It never really, not good, but it never happens, right? But I say it so that people feel comfortable and that that I'm here for you.
Yeah.
I have your best interest at heart. And because I really do.
Mm-hmm. I know you do. Yeah.
I don't want people to feel like they're left out in the cold, or I'm just going to come here. I'm going to give you this, this information. I'm not going to explain what I'm doing. I mean, I also have just, I thought it was important to put in like a little disclaimer that when you book with me, like I'm, this is a very therapeutic experience. I'm not a registered therapist.
Yeah.
I have a background in social work, but I'm not a registered therapist. So I can't be that person for you.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to separate that as well. And also, I think I'm going on a tangent, but
no, it's interesting too, because we have similar backgrounds as well. So like I went to university planning to be a licensed therapist. So I have a degree in psychology, was going to do my master's. Life took me on a different path. But I love how full circle it is. And I still have come to a place where I can help people in their journey of healing. But it's just interesting because we both have similar backgrounds in our education and how but I feel it's a character thing about us too. Like it's part of our character to be heart-centered, but then we've got this extra layer of learning about the ethics of this work, of any work in which you're offering any sort of guidance to anybody else. So for me, yes. Yeah. I always say that too. So like when I start my sessions, I'm like, just so you know, this is a private, safe space and I will not use this information for anything outside of here. Like this is your safe space. Like you, I ask people before a reading to set their intent. So what I mean by that is think about whom or what you would like to come through. And then don't tell me anything. And then watch as it comes through. Yeah. That is your confirmation of your own connection. Because I really feel it's important. I feel like we do quite a good job in our own, when we speak and we share our messages to our own crowds. How we both try to empower the client, the other person in this is not just like, you don't just have to come to us to be connected to spirit. You already are. Like I read something a long time ago, and it's like a medium is not ever, like, I can't remember the wording, but it's essentially a medium is just there to validate an already it's a medium is not meant to create a connection. A medium is meant to validate an already existing one. And I think that that's part of the ethical part too. But like, I also just wanted to quickly touch on how we both work as well. You know, like, we wouldn't, I feel like confident that I can speak to for you. Like, neither of us would ever approach you, anyone, anywhere, and say, oh, so your grandmother is around you, or I'm feeling this about you. That's the part of mediumship.
Lesser, but we wouldn't do a Teresa Caputo.
No, right? But that's what people see. That's what people see in movies and TV.
Yeah.
It's so over the top, right? That's for TV, right? Like, there wouldn't be a show if she kept everything to herself and waited, right? So yeah, it's really, really important for both of us. You know, like, I don't offer any information that people aren't like asking me. Like, I'm like, if you book a reading, you're giving me permission to tap into that.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing it otherwise. And it's also an important thing that sometimes if I'm doing, say, like an intuitive guidance reading, so that's more like a psychic type reading where I'm picking up on that client's energy as a living person. And if somebody else comes in, like information about somebody in their life, I always pause to say, I just want you to know that that person hasn't given me permission to tap into their energy. So I am not. This is coming from your higher self's perspective about that person or that situation, right? Yeah. So I think that's important as well, that people that do this work just don't tap into like anybody or everything. Like, that is not how this is supposed to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like we could talk about this for a very long time.
Very long time.
So long that I think, well, I know the next episode, we're going to continue this talk all about ethics and mediumship. Maybe we'll bring in some spirit stories or some personal examples of this. Mm-hmm. Sound good?
Sound good. Sound good. Sounds
good.
Thank you guys for joining us. It was a pleasure. Please come back. You won't want to miss it.